Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Certified Educator Program's webinar session, Customizing CK-12 Adaptive Practice and Assignments. I'm Lindsay, one of the CEP program managers, and my colleague Katie and I are going to be running today's webinar. We've had a great start to the 2018 Certified Educator Program this week, so thank you for all of you who've been on some of our sessions already. By now, hopefully you guys are getting comfortable with the CEP Google Classroom and you've been able to find all of the assignments and resources that are located in there. And then I think you guys are also getting pretty comfortable with the Zoom webinar software. We do want any Q&A, we do want you to use the Q&A window for any questions that you have for our presenters during this webinar. And then in the chat window, you guys are off and running with your introductions, talking about the subjects and where you are and what you're teaching. Just do make sure that you've changed that to say all panelists and attendees so everybody can see what you're typing in the chat window. So if you have any questions still about the program or about Zoom, feel free to ask us in the Q&A window, or you can always email jumpstart@ck12.org. But we're gonna start getting going here with the content. So let me kick it over to Katie.
Thanks, Lindsay. And thank you to everyone who joined us today for our session on customizing practice. In our Getting Started with CK-12 Adaptive Practice and Assignment session, we covered the basics of our adaptive practice system, along with classes and reports. If you missed that session, I highly encourage you to join us next week for that session or to watch the recording in the CEP Google class. But note that if you watch the recording, that won't count towards your requirement of 5 live sessions for the program. In this webinar, we'll be covering the following topics: customizing CK-12's adaptive practice into quizzes. This includes the difference between practice and quizzes and quiz settings and options. Then we'll be talking about creating your own questions and using the math editor. Both the options and question types you can use, the settings, and then the formatting within the math editor. And finally, multi-concept assignments and reports. So this is specific to CK-12 classes and includes creating one assignment with multiple concepts in the same assignment, or including practice and a quiz in the same assignment, and then how that appears in reports. Our main goal is that by the end of this session, you understand the difference between practice and CK-12 quizzes, that you can customize your own, that you can create your own customized questions and assignments, and that you know what reports would look like for each in CK-12.
Okay, before we get going into the core content of the webinar, we're going to launch a poll because we would like to learn a little bit more about your knowledge with our practice tools and options for customizing. So you're going to see a poll on the screen here right now. You guys should be seeing it. We've got one question for you, and it says, what experience do you have with customizing CK-12's adaptive practice into quizzes or with using multi-concept assignments? Your options are: I am new to CK-12's adaptive practice, I use CK-12's adaptive practice, I have customized CK-12's adaptive practice into quizzes, and lastly, I have created multi-concept assignments within CK-12 classes. So I'm going to give you another 10 seconds or so to lock in your answers. I get a sneak peek at the results, and it is what I would guess probably at this moment. Let's see as the last few of you answer. Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and end this poll, and we're going to show you the results. And no big surprise, I'm hoping a lot of you guys have joined the Certified Educator Program to learn more about all of these features that maybe you've seen, you've heard about a little bit, but you've never really made the time to explore. So the fact that 77% of you are new to CK-12's adaptive practice, no surprise. Like Katie said, hopefully some of you at least attended the Getting Started with Adaptive Practice session. And if you haven't, definitely pick that up. We do have some veteran users here of CK-12's adaptive practice, and only a few of you who have gone into customizing or creating multi-concept assignments. So hopefully we're going to show you some things that are going to pique your interest here during this presentation. I do want to remind you guys that we have a resource page for all of our sessions. We've created these to hopefully be a reference for you that you can look at while we're doing the presentation, if you're somebody who wants to print and write notes on this page, or just know that it's there in Google Classroom later on as you're getting serious about making assignments and using adaptive practice. So with that, let's move into the differences between using CK-12's adaptive practice and customized quizzes.
So the first thing that we would want to talk about is the ways that practice and quizzes are the same. So both of them pull from our database of over 150,000 plus questions. So those questions are primarily math and science. And then we have some spelling questions in there as well. That's what we have already pre-populated in there. And our adaptive practice pulls from there. And then when you create quizzes, you have the choice to pull from there as well. These can be quick assigned using that little assign to class feature. So hopefully you guys were in that getting started session and you have seen that multiple times, but I will show you again when I live demo. The reports for practice and quizzes include, in addition to kind of just a score, the time spent, the level of the questions, the answers, and more details there. Practice and quizzes can be accessed online or via the app. That is also online. I know a couple of our apps work offline. Because practice is adaptive and you're submitting answers to it, you do need to be online, either on a computer or a tablet or phone using the app to access practice and quizzes. And then hints are available for both of them. In quizzes, you can choose to turn it on or off. Now, some of the features that are specific to adaptive practice is that our practice automatically adjusts to students' skill level. That means that if they are doing well, they'll be getting harder questions. If they're struggling, they'll be getting easier questions. And if they're really struggling, then they will be offered different modality recommendations. That means they might get a video, they might get some text page to read or an interactive to work with before they go back and continue to practice that concept. The goal is preset at getting 10 correct. It really is a learning and practice tool. So we've set that goal for students. And so you could have one student get 10 correct at kind of the easy level, another student do one easy question, one medium question, and a bunch of hard questions and get that goal of 10 correct based on how they were doing. And then students pick up where they left off. So they can come in and out of practice and they could turn practice in kind of at any point before the due date that they're working with. So they could continue to work towards a higher score as they worked from there. Now in quizzes, there's a couple differences. In quizzes, teachers choose the number and or even the specific questions that they want for any particular concept. So this would not be adjustable. If you're picking the questions, our system is not going to override the questions that you chose in order to give students something different. So that the quiz feature could be used more as an assessment as opposed to practice. Teachers can create their own new questions for that. And then the report there for a student is based on the total number of questions. So if there are 10 questions in the quiz, the goal would be 10 correct. But if there are 20 questions in the quiz, getting 10 correct would only give you a 50%. And quizzes, a student has to start from the beginning and work their way through at each attempt. They can't kind of save it and come back to it and talk to their friends and do all the rest of that. You can set multiple attempts, but each time they go in, they start fresh and they work their way through the quiz at that time. So with that, let's see what this looks like on CK-12. So I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to go over here. And you can see the home page for CK-12. And let's talk about kind of where you can find practice. So you could start by finding practice. Let's say I was looking at Earth Science. I could go just to the adaptive practice icon down here, and I could click on that. And then I could open this. And if I picked a particular topic, you can see it looks like I opened these, but I haven't started doing anything on them. So if I clicked on scientific method here, I could, right from this screen, I could start customizing it directly for my class. And then if I close this out, I could go back to the home page and I could browse through the concept page as well. So if we were talking Earth Science, I think I just looked at the scientific method. So I would go to that. Notice we're on the Earth Science page. I expanded the first piece. And then if I click on scientific method, that brings me to the concept page. And if I open that concept page and I open the practice attached to it, you'll see a couple of options. One, here's that assign to class feature that I was talking about. That's the quick way to assign content. So if I click on that, I could assign it to a class in CK-12. Or if I'm using Google Classroom, I would assign it to Google Classroom. But whatever that is, I'm gonna not worry about the assignment piece right now because I'm worried about customizing it. So if I click Customize, it says I can add my own concepts, questions, time limits, etc. Got it? And now I get bumped into the question editor, sorry, the quiz editor tool. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to demo this. So I am going to put a new title on this. So this is a demo for CEP 2018, just so that I know what I'm talking about and where that works. If for any reason let's say I'm going to create this quiz, I can go preview it. I could go back to practice. But now if I wanted to customize this, if I was on it, so this, notice, is the practice page. And so I'd customize it again into a quiz if I wanted to start with that. But if I'm looking for the quiz I customized, I would look for it in my library. So notice the first thing here is my demo for the Certified Educator program. I can open that up, and I have the option to edit it. So that tells me I'm starting with something I already worked with. And anything that you customize, whether it's a read or practice or some other kind of maybe a video modality or something like that, you'll find in your library. So let's go back in and edit this. And now we can talk about different options. So we already put a name in here. Might say a like intro to scientific method for CEP. So that's my description. So if I'm trying to remember what's in that, we can go from there. From here, I have a number of attempts. So I could, right now it's set at unlimited. So basically I could let the students do it as many times as they wanted until it hit the due date. Or I could say, I only want you to take this once or maybe twice, to say like you have 2 shots to do it, whatever that looks like. But I would want to set that number of attempts there. I can also set a time limit on it. So I can say for each attempt that you do, you have maybe 20 minutes to do the whole quiz or an hour to do the whole quiz. So you're setting a minute limit for, let's say, the whole quiz. So maybe 30 minutes. And here I have the option to show hints, okay? So I could include hints, or if I actually wanted to treat this like a quiz, I might choose not to show hints in there. And then I could choose to shuffle questions. And what that means is that each student would get the same questions, but they would get them in a different order as they're working their way through. I'm gonna leave that unchecked for right now, just because I want you to be able to see kind of the order of questions and what that looks like. But if you select the shuffle questions, then because you've had the system scramble them, then you don't really control the order at that point in time. So let's go over to an actual kind of concept and the questions that we're working with. So here, the first thing I do is that the system defaulted to pull 20 out of the 30 questions in the scientific method. So from there, you can kind of go through and you can see different parts. So I could say, I only want 15 questions. So in this case, the system is presetting that number. And then if I click out, notice it says you're about to change the number of questions in the scientific method. It will reset any earlier changes in this question set. So if you've handpicked your questions, don't change the number afterward. It's not picking from your subset of questions. That's just the system randomly pulling 15 questions, a mixture of different types and levels and whatever. But I can stick with I haven't really picked anything yet, so I can change that. I could actually go into the questions themselves and click edit on this little pencil icon. That's our edit icon across all of our system. And now I actually can see the questions. So I can expand this and see, what does this question look like? Which of these statements does not lead to a good question for the scientific method? In addition to kind of seeing the actual question, I can quickly see what type of question it is, the difficulty level, as well as the author. And this is important. Anything that CK-12 has created will say CK-12. If you've written your own questions, you'll see your name there. So you'll know which ones are your handwritten questions. Because I didn't choose the shuffle option, I can choose to reorder these questions using the same drag arrow options that you would see in a flexbook within CK-12. So I could go down here and I could say, I like some of these, but maybe I don't want this hypothesis question. So I'm going to uncheck that and it will no longer show up from there. I could uncheck another one and say, what makes a good scientific question? Let's see what that looks like. Can be answered, doesn't lead to more questions, doesn't involve involve spiritual matters, question about detail. I can even kind of test this. Nope. So a question's testable, great. That is actually what I want my student to answer, so that's good. Let's include that question. So if I do that here, you'll see that if I save this for a second, so let's save this. You'll notice that the number is now 14 because I had only picked 14 total questions. And if I went back in and edited it, the first 14 would be picked. So it would have moved that last question I picked up to that part so that it's in that order and I could rearrange accordingly. So that's the choice to select and deselect questions. We're going to talk a little bit later in this webinar about adding your own and writing your own questions. So I'm going to hold off on that part for right now. But I'm going to just save this part. It has those 14 questions. And then here, if I said, oh, I only want 13, it's going to remind me, wait, you already made changes? Do you really want to change this number? And I'll say, no, I handpicked those questions. Let's not do that. So the next kind of piece that I could do is I could say, well, I want to make this a quiz that covers more than one topic. So I could add other areas. And so let's see, we had something on hypotheses. So maybe I'm going to look and see what my options are for maybe developing hypotheses. So earth science, these are all good ones. Let's include both developing and testing hypotheses. And then I'm going to select those options, and you'll notice that they both show up in here. And I defaulted to 20 of these questions and all 12 of the questions that I have here. So you can fit 100 questions total in your quiz, but so you're going to want to probably pick and choose different numbers from each part. But just note that if you're having trouble adding, it might be that you've already maxed out the 100 part there. I can use the numbers here. Notice if I hover over the number for 3, I can get the drag arrow option and I can rearrange the order of the concepts that they hit within this quiz. And then I could go into those as well, and I could do the same kind of hand picking of the questions. Or I could say, I'm going to just pull all those questions, but maybe I only want them to get 5 from here. So those are all different options for kind of creating the big pieces, setting the limits, choosing your different concepts, and including them within one quiz. So let's maybe take a pause there once I save that piece and say, okay, are there any questions that are coming in within this webinar, and see if we can answer some of those as we go through.
Katie, we have a couple of people who I can tell are trying to wrap their head around the difference between adaptive practice and quiz. So Jared's asking, can you set questions for a quiz to be unique, like ones that they haven't seen in practice? And then kind of related, Elizabeth was asking, if she modified parts of a read, is she able to remove practice questions that show up in related content? So I think that's kind of a good sort of explain to them the philosophical, thing behind CK-12's adaptive practice here.
Sure. So right now, when I'm creating this quiz, I'm pulling from the same database that our practice comes from. So your student might or might not have seen that same question within that particular topic. If you wanted to make sure that they hadn't seen that question, you could write your own questions and create a quiz out of that. But if you are just hand pulling from our database, you would be potentially seeing the same questions. Now remember, adaptive practice works where the practice questions that are served up are based on how a student is doing. So some students might have seen them already, some other ones might not have seen them already for any specific question within here. So that's kind of the piece that works in terms of, can I choose the questions that they didn't already see? Because every student might have different questions, you might want to write your own questions that you're working with from there. Kind of in line with that, this question of, well, if I modify something, how do I modify the practice? At this point in time, your option is to hand choose your questions and create a quiz, and then everyone would have the same quiz that they're working off of. You could say, if you get 50% right on that quiz, I'm going to count it as correct if you want to set a lower goal. But there's not currently a way in our system to choose a subset of our practice to make it for students if you've kind of pulled pieces out of a read. We tried to make our concepts pretty specific so that the skill being covered in that area is the skill being covered in the practice as well. But that request has come in enough this year that we're looking into options to say, is there an in-between? Right now it's practice where it's adaptive, or quiz where I fix it. And we're looking at options to say, in the future, could we offer something that is kind of a subset of practice that would allow you to do more of that? But right now, those are distinct options.
A couple of questions have come in about hints and about answers. The first question is, can we show hints for only certain students, such as special education students? And then the second question is asking about showing solutions. Do students see that as they answer or at the end?
So the hints piece is for this particular quiz. You could create 2 instances of this quiz and choose one that shows hints and one that does not show hints. And then, especially if if you're using a learning management system where you can assign to subsets, you could assign one version of the quiz to them and one version of the quiz to the other batch. Or if you have different CK-12 classes, you could assign that. But for any individual quiz, the option is show hints or skip hints, and it's for that particular assignment. In terms of the solution, if you look at this little I right here, it says students will have the option to the view solution after they answer each question. It's not available for time quizzes. So because we set a time limit on it, that's not showing up. So you could show them that solution. That solution is kind of like the worked out piece. So some of our questions have full solutions in there. But otherwise, if you haven't selected that, they'll only see the solution after they've finished the entire quiz. So I would say if you don't want them to see the answer until they see their final report when they finish it, then that would be something you'd want to work off of.
All right, we've got a lot of great questions coming in. I think the last one we're going to tackle before we continue on here a little bit, we had 2 people ask, just for a quick review here of when you were adding another concept to a quiz. A couple of people missed how you made that multi-concept quiz.
Sure. So right now you'll see the last card here. So if let me remove one of these just so that it shows up here. I did not want to go into the editing option. I want to remove that. There we go. So whatever concepts you've added within there, the next tile should say add question set. And so you would simply click the plus sign, and then you're going to search for your topic. I was doing something on the scientific method, and I remembered there was something on hypotheses. So I simply typed in hypotheses and said, okay, these are the 3 CK-12 concepts that include hypotheses. So I could select any one of them. And then it looks like I've already done testing. So maybe developing is the one I'm going to put back in there. And then that shows up there. So you're clicking the add question set and then searching for a topic, or you could browse if you knew I want to search for concepts, let's say in algebra, and it's going to show you, and you can kind of browse your way through almost like you would browse the concept, like the branch of algebra within there, and then you could pick your questions. And if I do this, there's 203 questions on 2-step equations. That's a pretty big topic. So I'm going to select that. It defaulted to 20, and I could choose anything up to 100 total questions in my quiz.
Okay, lots of questions in here. We do have a whole team working. We've got Star, we've got Carl, we've got Michaela answering your questions. If it's not answered live by Katie here with the demo, we are typing answers as quickly as we can. But I think Katie's next section is she's going to talk about taking this quiz process to the next level and your ability to create your own questions. So we're going to move into that area here as you guys continue to populate our Q&A window.
Thanks, Lindsay. So as we said, we had that option to add questions within here. So if I go back into editing any one of these, that first option, I can add my own question. So in this particular case, just remember that it's adding the question to that concept. So if I wanted to pick a different concept, I would have to then choose a different concept to add. And I could search my library. I could search some kind of different options within there. But this bumps you into the question editor tool. So the first thing I want to talk about is the type of questions that you have. So the last one I'm going to just talk about right off the bat to get this kind of out of the way. This is a discussion question. This is a great thing to kind of put on, you'll see this a lot on our Plix tool. That last question in a Plix is a discussion question, and it's kind of an open-ended question where I'm not marking a right or wrong answer. So none of the answers in a discussion question are correct or incorrect. It doesn't matter what a student clicks on. It's kind of just that question to prompt them. So if you want the system to record right or wrong answers versus just marking it correct if they click through it, then you're going to want to pick any of the first 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 choices that we have here. So multiple choice is pretty straightforward. If I click on that, you'll see I have A, B, C, D choices that I can work with. I could put kind of something simple in here. So this was on hypotheses. Which of the following hypotheses? And then I could put answer 1, not an answer, etc. So, and then not an answer. For the multiple choice things, not an answer 2, okay? I need at least 3 pieces. I could put more. I think you can put up to 6 answer choices, but I have to have at least 3 for a multiple choice answer. And generally, you'd say probably randomize them so students get answers in different orders. But if, for example, one of these was like neither of the above, then I probably would want to unselect the randomize option. I could put a full solution. This is helpful for kind of math if I was writing a multi-step problem or something like that, and you wanted students to have the option to see the full solution afterwards, that you could add there. Hints, I could add a hint. I could say, what is, remember the definition of a hypothesis, etc. And I could add that in there. I could add another hint, and so on. The difficulty level within practice, we kind of estimate it to begin with, and then it adjusts based on how students are doing on that piece. And I could add in a different concept or grades or standards. If I submit this, I can then preview what this question looks like. So this answer was correct. If I try it again, I think I clicked the randomize option, so it's going to show up in the same order. I can see my hint. I can see my scratch pad. I think it's preview, so it's not showing that option right now. But I can go in there and I can see what that looks like. And then when I'm done, I just click update and say I'm all set. Anything you add, so I'm adding a question to a quiz, just like if I was adding a section to a textbook, the last one that shows up is the one that I did. So it always shows up at the bottom of pieces you worked with. Notice how I can't change any of the other ones, but I can edit this particular one. It's still saying CK-12 because I'm in a CK-12 account. But for you, this would have your name right there and then the kind of edit option there as well. So you're seeing that within the quiz and at the bottom. And then if I wanted this somewhere else, I could kind of drag it up to wherever this piece is and I could save it. And so that would be a way of kind of creating a question within a quiz. If I'm just going to save this thing and I'm going to show you one other place that you could add questions. So back to quiz, we're all set. I could go into here. I could create new questions directly for this concept from here. It bumps me into my editor tool. Or if I just wanted to write questions to start with, I could start from any topic. So I could go back to CK-12. I could pick a topic, let's say, in spelling that I wanted to work with. We could talk about letters and sounds. And then if I'm in the practice choice here, so I'm just clicking on this practice option right here, I'm going to create new questions. Whatever concept you're in is going to be the default listed right here. So notice how this says letters and sounds for spelling. So if I did change the concept, I'd want to kind of update that concept to tag it so that I could use it in quizzes based on that concept. But let's talk about a couple of the other question types. Our true-false question type allows you to kind of do two true-false questions, or I could actually type something different here. So if you had a binary choice for your answers, you could use the true-false, and I could replace this with my answer choice and not my answer choice. There. So note that you could use that true-false option almost like a two-choice, multiple-choice question. For select all that apply, it's the same thing as multiple choice. So notice it's going to clear my response data because it's changing the answers. But that makes sense because I'm changing the type of question. But here I can select more than one answer for the select all that apply. And then we have a couple options. Short answer gives you a question type and then one space for the answer. Notice that I can ignore the space for the answer. So that's actually super helpful, that if I write y equals x, so I could do that. Instead of having to write an alternate answer choice where y equals x without spaces, I can just click the ignore the space for my answer when I'm creating that question. So super, super useful for you as you work your way through. The other option for that is kind of to do a fill in the blanks question. So here, let's say I wanted to have them write a polynomial. So write a third degree polynomial. And I could say in standard form with 1, and I could put a whole bunch of stuff with roots 2, -1, and 3. And then I'm going to add my answer. So basically I'm going to say y equals x to the third minus 4x squared plus x plus 6. And I could even change this to and superscript it so we get kind of the correct formatting from here, because you can use the same formatting options you have there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the coefficients in as numbers, and I'm going to make each of these an answer choice. So add an answer. I'm going to add this answer. And actually, let's make this second one -1. We're going to make this a plus sign. We can kind of work our way through. And I could go on and have them fill in those pieces. And then if I submit that, let's preview what that looks like. So that shows you, okay, here, now instead of putting this part, they actually have to put in like that -1 piece, or -1, I think is what I did. I have to change the 4 there. And they got those parts right. Let's say they did this. Because I included that 1 there, it's going to mark part of it right, part of it wrong. But that's a great way if you have kind of a multi-part answer, or you want words inside sentences that they need to fill in. That fill in the blank option allows you to put answers within the questions themselves. So I'm going to say done with that. I can edit all of this stuff except the type of question once I've submitted it. So I do need to just kind of say, okay, I'm all set with that, but I'm going to create a new question from scratch. The other 2 question types that are a little bit different that I want to make sure I go over, one is kind of this idea of drag and drop. This is a categorizing option. So if I click in here, I could say, sort the following based on whether or not they are metals. And then I'd put hydrogen, nickel, oxygen, nitrogen, and iron. And for each of these answer choices, I'm going to highlight them, add it as an answer choice. Same deal here. And here. And then I'm going to create my categories. I'm going to say one category is metals. And the other category is not metals. And then what you do is you would drag your pieces in here. So hydrogen, nickel's a metal, oxygen and nitrogen aren't, and then iron, we have metal up here. So that would be a way to kind of create that piece. So I'm going to submit it so I can see what it looks like and show you guys what that looks like. So here we have kind of the different parts. Let's say I just kind of toss stuff in here so you can see how this works. So when I check it, it said those are correct, that one's not correct. Now, I'm going to show you what this looks like on, this is the desktop preview. If I clicked preview on an iPad, or let's say even an iPhone, notice how it changes the spacing, and that's why it's not kind of a like, I have this fixed in this position. It's more, here are my category headings, and I'm going to drag them into that particular category as I go. Let's do one more question type for you, just so you can kind of see the other one that we've created recently, and that's called highlighting. So I'm going to start again from the beginning, show you our question type for highlighting. It works similarly in terms of building it to the question type for drag and drop. But I could say, highlight the nouns in the following sentence. An astronaut weighs less on the moon than on Earth. And I can say I want astronaut to be a noun, the moon to be a noun, Earth to be a noun, with or without the period. Notice I can't choose part of a thing. So it says highlighting parts of words is not allowed. You can't actually see that pop-up. It gave me a little pop-up there. But it says I can't do more than like a full word. And that's just because kids are just going to click on that word and it will highlight the whole word. So if I wanted them to do spacing, like to maybe do the vowels in something, I would actually have to spell a word out like Banana, if I wanted them to separately choose letters versus whole words. You can, however, highlight more than one word, but if a kid picked any part within that part, it would highlight the whole thing. So just be aware of that piece. So I'm gonna submit that choice. And we can kind of see what that looks like here. Oops. I can preview that as well. I could actually, if I want to customize this because I tag them to here, I will now see in these answer choices, see if we can edit this for a second. I'll see, in addition to the CK-12 ones, any ones that I have made. So let's see if we can find the bottom ones that we just created. Probably all the way down here. And there's plenty. Yep, so we have highlight the nouns in the following sentence. I want to see what that looks like. That has nothing to do with spelling. But because I made it and tagged it to this concept, it shows up there. And then I can just start clicking on pieces and check it.
While you're looking at that part of the screen here, Katie, we had several questions asking, I think people are trying to wrap their heads around if they have added a question, who else can see that question? Does that question need to be approved by CK-12? Is that question visible by the whole world who's looking at that quiz? Where does that question live? Talk through that, please.
Sure. So if you notice, because I made these questions, they showed up in my choices for adding to this particular concept. Anyone else making a quiz with this concept would not see the 3 questions I wrote myself. They live within my kind of options. So what it means is, like, as a teacher, I can't build questions and then have my colleague pull them into their quiz. But if I create a quiz that they then use, they would be seeing those questions show up within there. So you don't, same deal with kind of copyrighted pieces for Flexbooks. You want to make sure that anything you're adding to our system in any way, shape, or form, you have the rights to add there. Because if you're sharing that quiz and someone else, you share it with someone else, kind of that, all those pieces, they still need to fit under our Creative Commons non-commercial use license, where you're attributing everything correctly. So you can write your own questions in here, and that's totally fine. You want to make sure that if you bought questions, you're not adding them to our system. But primarily, you're the one that would be seeing that, and then people that you're sharing that component with. But you're not going to see them outside of the owner that created them at this point in time. We'll talk about, down the road how that might change or what that might look like. But for right now, you as the person that created them will see them in your question options for that quiz and that particular concept.
Okay, let's step back a little bit, and we have a couple of people who just wanted a refresher on how did you get to the page where you're able to create a quiz, and then what started the process of creating your own questions?
Sure, so let me start here. So I'm going to do the creating your own questions just because I'm already on the screen. If I'm in a quiz, so actually let's go back for a second. If I have created a quiz already, I will find it in my library. So I'm going to click on my library option. I'm going to be able to see any quiz I made. This is the one I just created right now that I didn't bother to title. And then I can create new questions for it even before I go into the quiz, or I could click edit here. And then when I'm in that quiz, if I go into the concept I'm working with, I can click edit again. And from there, I could write my own questions. So I could write questions from the main quiz page, or a similar page for practice, or from within the quiz itself. So that's kind of the option to start with. From there, I could click add question, and it would bring me into my question editor. The option to kind of start a quiz, you have 2 options to start a quiz. So option 1 is whatever concept you are on. So I'm just going to kind of clear out of this quiz space. So any concept I'm on, let's say measurement, I pick a topic. So I could browse like I'm doing right now, or I could search and find that topic. When I'm in practice, by clicking customize on practice, just like customizing on a Flexbook, clicking customize on practice, that will trigger the quiz creation option, starting with the concept you're working with. That would be the first concept that you're working with. You can start a brand new quiz from scratch from your library. Similarly, you could start a brand new Flexbook from scratch or read modality. But I could just say I'm in my library, I want to create something new. and I'm going to create a new quiz. And if I do that, it's going to open up the quiz tool, and there's going to be nothing attached to it. There's no concepts in it already, and I would have to start from there. I could add a question set and a concept and something at that point in time. So that's kind of the way you can get into your quiz and the way you can get to your question piece.
Okay, we're going to do a couple of rapid fire questions here. What is adding a distractor? What does that mean?
Sure. So if I'm in my quiz set, I'm just going to add something in here so I have something to work off of. Let's say whole numbers. Great. Select a concept. If I'm creating a piece, let me find a multiple choice question. So right here, this is a multiple choice question. There is one answer. All of the incorrect answers are what we call distractors. So basically, if you're creating a multiple choice question, you need your answer, and then you need something that they're going to not choose. And so those would be all the other questions, like kind of lines I would fill in. So the digit in the millions place is 7. So that's correct. The 2, 1, and 3 are all distractors. So if I was building this question from scratch, I would make sure the 7 had the little check next to it when I built it, and the 2, 1, and 3 were the other incorrect answers for a student.
Okay, a couple more, then we'll get back onto the next subject here. But we've got a user asking, can you remove one of the choices for a multiple choice question that has been created by the CK-12 question bank? Can our users edit CK-12 questions?
So no, you cannot touch the CK-12 questions. I can choose not to use this. I could unselect that, and I could basically build the same question that's already in our database with an almost identical thing, except one particular answer. But just like kind of the Flexbook piece, you're not going to edit the CK-12 content within there. We wouldn't want the entire population of teachers and students using our system to change our questions in our system. So you can't update that question, but you could take that content and you could build a similar question with a different answer there. So for the quizzes, in terms of kind of accessing them and sharing them, you could assign them within here. I could go back for a second, and I could, let's pull this quiz up. So I could share this with my class, and this quiz would show up there, or I could assign it to my class. So if you created kind of a resource where you were working with, if I was sharing this with my class, that would be an option. Or I could share a direct link using my little share plane. So if I use this link right here, or the URL at the top, kind of that's the other option. So if I do this, I could then access that quiz directly. But quizzes aren't really searchable in the same way that other topics are, but you can kind of see those pieces there.
Okay, we've got a couple questions related to reports, but I know that you're going to cover that in the upcoming section. So I'm going to steal the screen back for a minute, and we're going to go back to our keynote presentation. Keep the questions coming in Q&A. This is awesome. Lots of good questions. Let's see here. Okay, I think what we want to show you now is we like showing you clips of interesting educators that we've met on our different travels. This is an educator named Jonathan Waters, and he is a teacher at El Paso School District in Texas, and he's going to talk about how he uses quizzes in his classroom.
So the practice, and especially now with some of the updates, has become more adaptive to where the students are working on different questions. The more questions they get right, they seem to get more challenging. You know, I've noticed as I go around help kids, question number 5 for one student is not question number 5 for another student. And as a teacher, it benefits me because it challenges the students to their level. I think I had a student earlier talk about how it's kind of adjusted to her and it kind of keeps her engaged. And then also, too, it helps me kind of see where these students are at. And then the quizzes I attach to the practices that come from that question bank, those tend to use the same questions for every student. But then again, at the same time, the real-time feedback is something I like, too. So the kids, they take the test, they know immediately what their grade is. They don't have to wait for me to grade a paper, grade an assignment, and then on top of that, they can go back and review and see, okay, I'm missing these types of questions, or I'm doing well in the medium type of questions, but I'm missing the hard questions. And so if they choose to, they can even go back to the practice and kind of work their way back to some of those harder questions.
Okay, hopefully that was helpful. Again, just to get an idea of how teachers are using quizzes in their classroom. Our next topic is going to cover multi-concept assignments and reports. We talked about regular assignments and reports in a previous session. This is taking it to the next level by allowing you guys to do multi-concepts. So, multi-concept assignments or assignments with practice and quizzes. We're going to talk about how you can create from within CK-12 classes. Students can access Practice app or within the classes, and students can choose order to complete. For our reports for assignments with multiple parts, they're split into multiple parts. Each part is based on the type of assignment, and practice is based on 10 correct, and then the quizzes are based on percentage correct. So remember that quick assign for other modalities is simply a check first and complete based on how they accessed, whether or not they accessed the read, the video, or if they did any exploring within an interactive.
So as I showed you, we made it easy for you to assign content using that quick assign option, but I'm gonna take the screen back from Lindsay and we're gonna talk about kind of options within a class. So this is an option specific to a CK-12 class. So if I go to my class here, I wanna talk about just kind of building one option for a multi-concept assignment. So instead of using the quick assign feature, I could go to the assignments option. And here I could create a new assignment. And this is the only way to kind of create a multi-part assignment. So let's say I was doing a unit. I'm going to click this little spyglass. It pulls up my search feature on mass and matter. Let's see what my options are. So we have mass, matter, and volume. That might be a good one to work off of. So I can pull that concept. I could also maybe do another one on volume if I wanted to add more questions on volume. Let's say volume, length and volume, maybe. See if we can find, there we go. There's another one that might be useful in that same piece. So let's pick the one in chemistry. So we stick to the sciences for this part. So here I'm creating one assignment with multiple parts to it. I can even add a quiz to this assignment. So if I click this plus sign, it will pull up all the quizzes that I have created. And so I could pick anyone that I wanted. So let's say maybe the demo that I wanted to include for today. And those would be the quizzes that you wanted to put in there. So basically you can pick and choose. I could create a new one, but then I would kind of need to re-access this assignment. So if you want to add a quiz, I recommend creating your quiz first. And then when you create your multi-part assignment, you include that quiz directly from there. And so now I can save this assignment. So I'm going to create an assignment name. So two practices and a quiz for here, and I can assign it to this particular class because I'm working within CK-12, the CEP grades class. So if I'm a quick assigning, I can assign to multiple classes, but if I'm building an assignment directly within here, I'm going to assign it, I could assign it directly to here, and then I would pick my due date. You will have the option, I'll show you in a second. So within this assignment flow, notice that if I show more, these are other ones that have been assigned to other classes that I could choose to pull over. So if you did that work to kind of make that multi-part assignment, you could then choose to bring it in to a different class from there. But that right here is the one I just did. It has 3 parts, 2 practice and a quiz, and then students could work on that piece. So that's kind of the one way within CK-12 to pull multiple concepts into one assignment. This part is adaptive, this part is adaptive, and this is that fixed quiz. And so then I want you to just kind of take a second and see what this looks like, both from a student standpoint as well as from a reporting standpoint. So I'm going to switch over to a student account for a second. So this is my Jumpstart student account. You can see multiple options in here. I'm going to actually reload that assignment page just so you can see that new one that I put in here. And you'll see I now have 2 practices and a quiz in here, and it has 3 parts. I could choose any part I wanted to do first. I could start with the middle part on length and volume. I'm going to close out of that for a second. Oh, it looks like it was due a while ago. Or I could turn in kind of parts for different pieces, a demo for this part. I think I had assigned something beforehand, and I could start that piece. So the student could access all of those 3 parts in any order. but they can see those different parts, and they would get scores on each part of that assignment. And let me switch back over to my other one. So we have our classes, our teacher version. And this one has no work done for it. So let me pull up a different one under reports so you can just see what that looks like from the standpoint of a teacher. So here, this is the one that I assigned earlier. So scientific notation and exponents. And I had a couple students work on this piece. So here in scientific notation, they got that this is a practice one. My notation and exponents, I believe, is my quiz that we're working with. So let's go into any one of these and see what is happening here. So here we have the scientific notation piece. She got most of them right. We're good to go. I can see kind of the same score I would see for parts. Quizzes are a little different, so I just want you to see what that looks like. Let me go back one step, and let's look at her quiz for a second. So you'll see that she actually did 2 attempts. The first time she did it, she got 100%. The second time she did it, she got a 50%. I can see this attempt right now. I'm seeing attempt number 2. I could go back and I could just see attempt number 1 if I wanted to see kind of pieces, view details on that one, and it would show me the details on her 100%. So as a student, I probably would recommend she doesn't turn in the second version of it because it was showing this particular piece, viewing details. But I could go back and I could see, oh, she actually got 100% on one of them versus the latest one that she turned in. Students can keep turning in work. They can turn in practice. They can turn in quizzes based on the number of attempts that they're given up to the due date. And it kind of locks that score at that due date. So just know that piece as you're working your way through. So I think that covered that piece. I did want to show you one more thing within the question part, just so that you could see one other piece, because we kind of got sidetracked on questions. This is a bonus point for anyone that is super excited about creating new questions. And I'm just going to preview it, and then I'm going to let you play with it. So try it out. If you want more information, you can email us. But this variables option right here allows you to create variables. So I could say X is going to be a number between, let's say a number 1, 2, 3, or 4. And I could add that in there. And now I have a variable that I can work with. So I could say X plus 5 equals is what? And then I could drag that same thing in there. And I could just say I want my answer to be X plus 5. And I want my answer, anything else, to be, let's say, 2, 3, or X. Oops. We could drag this variable in here, X minus 1. So I would want to make sure that none of the other kind of variable options could also be the potential answer. But I could create variable choices in there. So if you are super excited about algorithmic questions, you're welcome to use this and kind of play around with it and understand how that works. But that definitely gives you some options if you wanted students to see different numbers when they were working in. And occasionally you'll see those in here. It's a newer feature, and so you'll see that kind of work its way through. But I think we're going to stop there and see what questions we have coming in, and then we can go.
We have a few questions. One's asking, does the system give partial credit? Like if a student gets 1 correct of 2 items in a fill-in-the-blank question. And the answer to that is no. It's going to either count it correct if they answered the whole question correct, or it's going to count it incorrect. Then, Katie, how does our system grade the short answers? How would I see the students' answers, and can I give my own feedback?
Sure. So let's go back to kind of that grading place. So I'm going to go back to my classes. And let's see if there were any, hopefully, short answer ones in here. If any of my reports, I could see how a student was doing in here. So this is a practice answer. Let's see if we can see some of these options. So here you'll see, okay, they got those ones correct. They got that one incorrect. This is actually a fill in the blank. So I wrote in that answer number, and that was incorrect. Because I didn't round to the nearest hundredth, I rounded to that place. So you'll see their answer choice. And if there's multiple parts to a question, you'll see that they got parts right and parts wrong. So you could choose to give them a different grade if you wanted to. Within our system, it would still keep the grade recorded as whatever that percentage was. But you could, in your own gradebook, kind of adjust that if you wanted to do so. But that does allow you to kind of see what their answer was versus whether or not it marked it right or wrong. when you're in questions itself, there is an improve this question option. So if you think that our open response answers are too specific, as in you want them to have both 7 and 6.8 to be values. Now, in here we noted round to the nearest hundredth, so they should be rounding to the nearest hundredth. But if there's something that's a little more vague that you think should be updated to include an alternate answer choice, you're always welcome to click improve this question, and we can kind of see if we can make that question better based on, maybe a common misspelling of an answer or something that really means the same thing that you'd want us to include.
We'll do a couple more questions right now. We've got several questions relating to learning management systems, and I would encourage all of you to join one of our LMS breakout sessions. We had one earlier today that talked about reports and assignments within Google Classroom. But Katie, maybe briefly, you can answer these questions. Can multi-assignments be pushed out to Google Classroom, or is this only for CK-12 Classroom? Actually, I think that was the same question. 2 people had that question.
So the multi-concept assignments are specific to the CK-12 classes. That's why I only spent a couple of minutes on that today, because I wanted to make sure that if you're using CK-12 as the place where you assign content, then that's a bonus feature. Within other learning management systems, you would have needed to assign those 2 concepts and quiz as separate assignments within there, and just tell your students to do all 3 by that particular due date. So it's not that kind of like bonus that here's your 1 assignment with 3 parts. You would need to assign separately in 3 parts in there. But I would recommend, if you are using a learning management system such as Canvas or Schoology or Google Classroom that have grading within that system, that have grade pass back with CK-12, do not create an extra class in CK-12 just for that one feature. There's kind of bonus features for Google Classroom because you can adjust grades after they've turned it in. There's, each system has their own pros and cons. Stick with the one you're using and use that, because a good portion of the times where I've had teachers say, I can't find my grades, it's because they assigned it in one versus the other, and half their grades are showing up in one system and half in the other, and that just gets really confusing. So keep to your one option and go from there.
Okay, as we're approaching the 1 hour mark, I do want to give you guys some information kind of about our just program, make sure everybody's on the same page here, and then we're going to stay on and we're going to answer more questions. Any questions that you guys have. So keep adding things to the Q&A. I don't think I want to be on that screen. Here, I'm going to be on the screen. So our tools and apps page, we mentioned this in several of our webinars. We do want you guys to go to the tools and apps page. It's just a reminder of how you can access some of these different tools. So this is going to include information and links not only to our practice app, but also to our Flexbook and Simulations app, and also our offline reader. So today we demoed CK-12 classes briefly, but those of you who are using a learning management system, you may want to watch the recording or attend one of our breakout sessions where we show our full integration with Google Classroom, Schoology, and Canvas. These short sessions, they don't count as the core webinars, so they're not going to count toward your 5 live sessions, but they're just little mini breakout sessions for those of you who are using one of these learning management systems. We want to make sure that you know how to best integrate with CK-12 during the school year. We also have a bunch of live chats, and we haven't talked a ton about this, but next Friday, we want to bring together educators from different regions and kind of different areas of focus, and we're going to let you guys do some talking. So we're using Zoom breakout rooms for this, and it's a little bit different. If you join us for the live chats, we have different times listed in Google Classroom for your area. If you're a West Coast educator, you want to jump on that live chat, we're going to actually put you guys in small groups, and you're going to be able to turn on your microphone, and you're going to be able to talk to each other. So we think it's important for you guys to be able to have a conversation and get ideas and brainstorm for how you're going to be using CK-12 in your area or in your specific area of focus or your region of the world. If you have not yet joined the Jumpstart for Educators forum, please join that. It's a great place to have a conversation as well. And then ask me anything. Now that you guys are a few days into our program, you're probably coming up with some great questions for our executive director and co-founder. Neera Khosla is the one who started CK-12. She's the one running our office here every day. And we're going to put her on the spot. We're going to let you guys pepper her with any questions you might have about CK-12. That's going to happen next Wednesday, and you can register for that in our Google Classroom. So we hope you'll attend and have some good questions for Niru. We do have a resource page that we hope will help you as you're revisiting the topic of quizzes and adaptive practice. You can find that in the Google Classroom. And then, of course, there's an assignment to go with the session. So please complete the assignments. We try to make these engaging and useful things that you're going to be able to put to use this upcoming school year. And lastly, we always have a feedback form for you. We're getting lots of great comments, things that we can do to improve, things that are going well. We do love hearing from you, your feedback. You can access this form in Google Classroom at any time. It's not mandatory, but anytime you've got feedback to give us, we read every single comment. So again, thank you very much for joining us today. We have reached the hour mark. You guys who need to head off, goodbye. Thank you for being here. You're welcome to stay on and listen to more questions if you have questions that still need to be answered. If we neglected to answer your question or you have some deeper thinking questions, feel free to email them to jumpstart@ck12.org. And then, of course, we are on the socials if you are interested in joining the conversation, #CK12Certified. So let's kick it back to Katie to answer more questions from the Q&A window.
Thanks, Lindsay. So I'm going to take this screen back for a second and see if I can crank out a couple of questions in one shot. So we had a question about how multi-concept assignments are graded in CK-12. So right now you can see this is a particular assignment that is scientific notation and exponents. We have scientific notation adaptive practice here, negative and zero exponent adaptive practice, and then a quiz that I made on notation and exponents. So in this particular option, if I click on any one of these for scientific notation, let's say for Kaylin, I can see this was my practice goal. I can review her answers and go from there. If I go back here for a second and I look at maybe the notation and exponents for her for the quiz, it says she's attempted this once, she got a 90, so she decided to turn it in and she was done. So that kind of shows the different parts, but they are graded individually. It's not one grade for the whole assignment. With that kind of idea, each question gets the same point value. Right now, there's not a way to weight the questions for different point values. So just know that if you create a super long multi-part question, students in our system are going to get the same point value they would for a really easy question. So that's something that we can kind of consider for the future, but at this point in time, questions have the same weight across there. And then let's go back to that other question, this other student who had done multiple attempts, and I think this might answer some pieces. So the latest attempt that she turned in for practice, the number just keeps going up. So if they have a chance to continue to do practice and before the due date, it will continue to go up from there. For students up to the due date, the last attempt they turn in is the percentage score that she's getting there. So if she got a 90 or even 100 on the first one and she took it again, she probably would just want to skip clicking the turn in button for her there so that you got the first score that you were working off of. Because it is showing the latest one that they're working on. It doesn't average the scores. It doesn't kind of take those pieces into account. It takes the newest attempt as you're working for. Now you as a teacher can say, oh, she got 101 and 50 on the other. And especially if those were flipped and she turned in a score of 100%, but she had earlier gotten a 50%, you could choose in your own grade book to kind of average those and go from there. But yeah, and that highest score, same deal. If they're turning it in, it's the last score that they turn in, whether that's in here or within another system. So I think that takes care of my questions about score reporting and multiple times and weight values. And then there's a percentage score on Google Classroom assignments that I can talk about for a second. There is not a particular score on our assignments that you need to obtain because our Google Class assignments they're really more of an exploration, so we want you to go through it. It's not like there's a right or wrong answer for most of them. There's a couple that we just wanted you to think about, but they're good to go from there. And then from here, we had a question about doing a coefficient example again. So let me pull that up. It's kind of a cool one to work off of. I'm just going to open a library and basically get into a place where I can create a new question. It looks like you're trying to do this about balancing equations. So let me create a new question. The type that I chose was fill in the blank. So I'm going to choose a fill in the blank question. And you could say, let's say 2 oxygen plus 3 hydrogen equals, H and then 2O. And we can make this little subscript. And then we could put, and that is not going to work out at all. So let's try this as my answer choice. And so I could say, okay, what do I need here as an answer, and what do I need here as an answer? So I would just highlight those parts. So I have basically 4 hydrogen and 2 oxygen, and I could do that piece. And I could even, now in this case, I probably wouldn't want to do all 3 of them, because then any number would work, or get a multiple of those numbers. But if I wanted to say, what are the pieces here, does that work? Or I could say, let's skip the hydrogen one and do this and say, how does this work out? What do we get as an answer choice? And if I was going to do that, I could submit this, and then I'll show you what it looks like. So a student would have the pieces, and you could fill that in, and definitely use that fill in the blank choice to work with balancing equations. So hopefully that answered your question. We answered kind of averaging versus your grade reports show the latest turn in attempt, although if they've turned in multiple attempts, you can as a teacher can see both of those. And I think we are set on those questions that are still in our Q&A. So hopefully that answers all of your questions. And if you have any more, feel free to email us.
Okay, we'll give it just another second here to make sure that there aren't any other questions jumping into Q&A. But we would like to thank all of you for attending today. And we're going to go ahead and end this webinar, but we hope to see you on another one tomorrow or later this week. Thank you very much.